George, people often judge someone or judge someone where someone is going without understanding where they've been. What do people need to know about where you've been in order to understand where you are and where you're going?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think it's a deep question. It depends on how far back you really want to go, because as you touched on the intro there, I come from a sporting background, and I come from a middle class upbringing, and motorsport is very much an elite rich man's world. So that kind of early sort of struggle to keep up and compete, and my dad was actually a Yellow Pages salesman. He's very proud of it because he got Salesman of the Year and he got a trophy from like the 90s. So that's where I get all my sales tactics from. No, I'm joking. But that struggle was, quite real in terms of we would be turning up in the track and I'd be trying to compete, and in the back of my dad's transit van, and you'd have like Jolene Palmer being delivered in a helicopter. So it was quite a different comparison. So ultimately, it became all about getting sponsorship from day one. From the age of 8, it was, right, we need to generate income. How can we generate income? Look at marketing strategies. We would look at sales strategies, pitching. We ultimately came up with a strategy of selling tyres. So because, people, they want to help, but it's so expensive, you'd be like, okay, well, what about if you could sponsor the tyres for the weekend? If you could do 500 quid, we can do you a sticker, shout, back then it wasn't so much shout you out on social media. It was more like put you in a newsletter and, so on and so forth. And then it kind of naturally progressed into where we are today. So a lot of those early skills, negotiating, talking to people, really sort of shaped who I am today. But then as we kind of move through that stage, the struggle kind of continues further through to ultimately I worked for a modular building company, and that company went into liquidation, and the opportunity came up where I was speaking to the liquidators about potentially starting Explore Modular, and then it all happened very quickly. It was COVID. It was 5 years ago, so it was the beginning of 2020. So it was just when that first sort of wave was coming into the UK, and all of a sudden I was looking at not having a job, having 2 small children, and what the next plan was. So from there it was like, okay, well, I can do this. I've been involved in this for years, and I know what I'm doing. And then it's just slowly progressed from there, really. And over the last 5 years, we've gone from success to success, where we've gone from small welfare construction projects to now as a full framework for public sector contractor, as a main contractor delivering school extensions, hospital extensions, projects for ambulance service, and the sky's the limit.
Wow.
I kind of waffled there a little bit.
No, you didn't at all. That you've just given me everything to talk about. So let's go back to your early days. So you started motor racing at what, 8 years old-ish?
Yeah, so I started at 7, competing at 8, won a world title when I was 13.
What world title was that?
So that was racing in like a junior category, and the world finals was in Dubai. So again, all of these stuff, it's really cutthroat. So the last, big World Series that I entered was in Japan, and I think I came like 14th, something like that, which doesn't sound that impressive. But let me just give you the real short version of that. In order to qualify nationally, you need to come in the top 5 of a national competition. Then from there, you go to a European qualifiers event. On the European qualifiers event, there is 3 different circuits, all hosting over 100 drivers on the same weekend. And then the top 35 all go through to the European finals. So now you're still competing in a pool of about 90. And then the top 35 of the European finals then qualify for the world finals. And that is brought together by like the South Pacific, the European finals, so on and so forth. And then that creates the world finals. And then ultimately I made it through that number, which I think was about 80 in that race, by qualifying heats and so on and so forth. And then I got into the A final, which is the grand final where you can win the world championship. And then I finished 14th.
Wow.
So, which, is, I didn't win that year, but it just gives you a bit of an idea of the level of competition. We're talking tenths, thousandths of a second. You can be 1/10 off. That could be the difference between like first and 30th.
Wow.
And it was really interesting. But we then, from there, came, was in the UK, and it was time to try and climb the junior categories. But the level of sponsorship all of a sudden jumps to, astronomical numbers. And, you're starting to talk to people and they're like, oh, yeah, this year you need 2 million. Next year you need 4 million. And it's like, this is out of our reach. This is, is this, bigger than what we can chew? But we gave it a really good go. In my first year into cars, into Formula Ford, I won the rookie championship, which ultimately meant that Ford sponsored me and provided me the car and the engine for the next year.
Wow.
And that was live on ITV4 on a Sunday afternoon. 35,000 people through the gate, like they're in attendance, 24 million viewers annually. That was at the time, so all those stats are well off. That was probably 10 years ago. And then, unfortunately, my mum got ill. And unfortunately, she did pass away of cancer when I was around 19. And she could see the struggle and the pain that I was trying to put myself into. And she kind of said to me, look, George, it's time to get a real job. And then I had to go into the world and find my way, which ultimately led me through to where we are now.
There's a lot in there as well. That's you've for a young man, you've lived a full life of highs, lows, and everything in between. And I just want to dig into like your finishing in motorsport and tell me to jog on if this is what these things are all about. So your family, were they a big I assume they're a motorsport family, because you don't come from a middle class family and try and compete. My mum didn't have a spare 2 million quid that she could have found sponsorship. Do you know what I mean? We were arguably weren't sort of middle class, but we were probably somewhere working middle, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But when you finish something like that, was it your mum saying you need to go and get a job, or was that like the key factor? And what made, she obviously saw that it was taken a toll on you, because I imagine it was probably races every weekend. It was, because you have to. Because
I mean I suppose the first point to clarify there is that I describe myself as having a middle class upbringing, which is maybe a little bit unfair. My dad was very much working class. He when his Yellow Pages stuff ended, he moved into catering, and he owns a burger bus at Lakeside, and that is basically what generated that was our source of income. He was the local burger man, if you like. So to say, when I describe it as middle class, is because we didn't necessarily need for anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dad was off at the weekends. He was doing his bits. He was helping me with racing in between and so on and so forth. But in the week, he was organising stock, and we was running a burger van. That was where we was at. But in terms of the actual poignant moment, really, we were fighting race for race to stay on track. And it just got to the point where it was affecting me so bad. I was starting to have this, discussions with my parents around, at what point do we say this is enough? And my mum came to that conclusion about 5 years prior. No, I'm
they
joking.
always do, don't they?
Yeah. But she always supported me. But she could see, since a young age, just always been driven, always been passionate, always wanted to do things. And if I'm good at, I'm not necessarily that good with my education in terms of grades and so on and so forth. But when came to motorsport and being fast and having a sort of natural ability to be able to jump in something and go quick, it's always been there. So yeah, I think it was more to the point she was seeing the struggle, and we was going from race to race to race, and it was like, are we gonna generate another £10,000 from sponsors and bleeding from this person and that person, where the reality was we wasn't £10,000 short, we was probably £20 million short. It's such a tough game that it's just, I look at it, people think it's hard to be in the Premier League. How many teams are in the Premier League? How many teams are there? There's all of the supporting teams, the lower leagues, where in Formula One, there is roughly on average 20 to 22 drivers, and there's only 1 or 2 seats that opens up every other year, because most people are in multi-term contracts. So like, even if you get to the peak of your career, it might just be that there isn't a seat available. So you do all of that, and then it's still nothing happens. I grew up with European racing with Nick de Vries, who was a Formula One driver, and he was amazing. He was a couple of years younger than me, but he was fantastic. Very analytical. I'm not going to pretend like we was best friends or anything, but I remember seeing him laying on by the side of the track once, and I was like, "All right, mate, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just watching the karts, and I'm just seeing how some of them are lifting more of the inside wheel, and if you come here and lay down, you can just see on the track how much distance between their tyre, which means how much steering lock they've got on, or they might have a bit more front end, so they've got the tyres in a little bit more on the front, or they might be running a softer axle or a stiffer axle to get more lift." And I was just like, wow. And he came from a pretty wealthy family, and he got all the way to Formula One. And ultimately, the window was so short because there was certain people fighting in that team at that time, and he was just in and gone, and now it's all over. So, I say that he's probably out there doing some sort of motorsport, I'm sure, enjoying himself.
Yeah.
But in terms of the dream of the Formula One ultimate thing, it's way easier to be a footballer. But there you go.
Yeah. Well, pressure does reveal standards, and you must have set standards at that point in your life. So what standards did that period, what did that force you to set for yourself?
Oh, it's really interesting. Actually, the reason why I like to talk about motorsport is because it shaped me 100% into who I am today. So I done a sport in excellence. I went to Croydon College, which was fun, going through the metal detectors every day. Then from part of that sport in excellence, I learned lots about training. I ultimately met the mind coach, which has almost became, shaped massively who I am today, and a deeper understanding of thought and process and how we react to things. So it gave me media training. So like, as we sit here today with a camera in my face, I'm quite confident with that. I can talk to you. I consciously now try not to ums and ims and and all of those things transpire into business. So yesterday, I had to do a presentation for a £3.5 million project that we've won. I didn't know we'd won it. I'd gone in there, and I was sweating buckets. The pressure was real, but on the surface, it was very dark. I was elegantly gliding through and shaking hands and talking to people and standing up in the room. There's like 8 people there, but this is a big deal to us as a business. £3.5 million project, shapes our future and our growth and where we're going and what we're doing. And a lot of that is from media training back in those early days. So it massively helps in every aspect, and even the mind coach stuff. I wasn't, up until I was about 20, even really that aware of the mind coach stuff. But now, as we've changed as a society, and we talk a lot more about mental health and our ability to be able to perceive other people's feelings. I'd been doing lots of that training almost 10 years ago. A lot of it is different in terms of sort of like NLP styles and visualization, but I still use it now. So when I went into this meeting yesterday, over the weekend, I done a little bit of meditation, and I visualized that we'd already won the job, and we was walking out of there shaking everybody's hands, and how we could administrate the job, and all this kind of stuff. In my mind, I was playing that out as a scenario, and that is through relaxation and then using all of your senses. So that's basically saying, well, what would I smell in that room? What would I visually see? What would the lighting be? What could I feel? Would I be standing? Would I feel my feet in my boots? And using all of your senses to take in that moment and almost create it in your mind. And then from there, I'm going a little bit off of topic, but the reason why that became a foundation to me is that what I did realize that wasn't enough, just the visualization. Visualization is great, but if I just sit here and say, I want a Ferrari, I want a Ferrari, I want a Ferrari, it's not going to turn up. Which then, as I sort of got to about 25, I really fell into Colby's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
And I've listened to it because I much prefer. I'm always busy. I'm always on the go. I'm a lot of time in the gym in the mornings, clear my mind. I just stick it in and listen to it over and over again. And I've probably listened to it, I'd say, at least 20 times.
Wow.
And it really resonates with me in terms of relationships, because ultimately this whole business malarkey is relationships. And that doesn't matter whether it's your relationship with your wife, your relationship with your children, your relationship with your staff, different levels of staff, clients, friends. That it's all about relationships, and they're all really difficult, and they're all really dynamic, and they're all very different. Some people need positive reinforcement. Some people don't want positive reinforcement, and so everyone is different. And the biggest thing, and which I've taken away from that book, is understanding how other people feel in that moment. Because it's very easy to say, "Oh, he's just shouting at me," being difficult. But ultimately, he feels like that. That's his reality. That's his paradigm. That's where he is. And if we can take some time to understand why he's actually feeling like that, then I might understand him a little bit more. I think the terminology is seek understanding before to be understood. I think.
Ooh.
Yes.
Mate, you are a fountain. You are a fountain of knowledge, of wisdom, of all of the stuff.
I mean, thanks, but I won't go quite that far.
But what happens? But that is all great.
Yeah.
What happens when it just goes Pete Tongo? How do you? Because you can, as you say, you can visualize, you can smell the leather on the Ferrari's steering wheel, and and all that stuff, and you can even go out and try your best to get it. Mm-hmm. But I'm guessing sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. And how do you deal with that? Because that's a different kind of pressure, right?
Oh, do you know what? I love that. And again, I keep talking about motorsport, but we will move on from that. The greatest thing about motorsport is it's 99.99% disappointment. There's no better way to be set up in life than try and go in any sort of motorsport discipline. You have engine issues, reliability issues, stuff doesn't happen. There's the preparation, there's the logistics, there's the mental, the physical capacity, as well as driving, as well as multitasking, doing 1,000 things at the same time. You're trying to keep control of an engine temperature by adjusting flaps and changing the jetting, and as well as overtaking and turning and steering. And there's so much mental capacity, but it's all about losing, because you very rarely win, very rarely. And it's the same thing in business. But ultimately, what you do need to do is create a recipe of success and stick to it. I'm sure it's really easy for anybody to listen to this right now and say, over the last couple of years, the economy has been really challenging for anybody and all businesses. And I think if they're not telling you that, they're probably not telling the truth. So, we need to stick to our fundamentals. And if we really believe in something and keep the faith, it will come, is the way I see it. We've had lots of challenges in business over the last 5 years. We've gone from nothing, from zero, to talking about sitting here now with you and closing a £3.5 million project. And there's been times where there is no work. We've still got to keep everything going and all of the overheads flowing. But there's a deeper strategy to that, and that is I've seen many businesses throughout the years. So once I'd finished racing, I'd been in the commercial world, probably for about 10 years, and I see lots of heavy overhead businesses, and my business plan from the very outset was all about external services and sharing the load and the profitability and working together, because ultimately we're stronger together. But what I can't do is just employ all these people, because if I employ all these people and we don't have work, I can't pay them. So the initial outset was all about using external agencies, external companies, to be able to increase the workflow in the business before we took on permanent people. So that worked from all levels, from marketing, sales, commercial support, contractual support, all of those sort of, even the accounts, where there was, I looked at previous companies where all of these heavy FDs and directors sit on the board, which they are necessary once you get to a certain size. But ultimately, I needed something to be dynamic and be different. We were starting out. We didn't have a yard. We didn't have an office. We had a hot desk, and then it was COVID, so everyone was working remotely. So I really needed to create something that, if the tap was turned off, we could still survive and still move and work with people and say, right, listen, when we're making money, we're all making money. It's as simple as that. And that's ultimately, we still carry that ethos today. You have to be careful who you're talking to, but ultimately it's a lean, mean team, and it's as simple as that. And keeping faithful to your plan. So, I'm very big on goals and setting plans. We set a 5-year plan. We've hit the 5-year plan. We've bettered the 5-year plan. And now we're working on, we have developed the next 5-year plan. And we've hit our targets for what we wanted in the UK market. We've hit our public sector frameworks. We're on the NHS SBS framework. We're on the LHC framework. We're on the Fusion 21 framework. Hopefully we're about to be on another framework, but I'm not sure where I can talk about it yet. But again, these are all public sector frameworks where our money is safe and secure. If we do a good job, we get repeat business, because ultimately it's all relationships, as I was talking about earlier. Ultimately, those clients are trusting us to do a good job, and they need to trust us to make them look good. So we need to protect each other and work together. We see loads of businesses that go, yeah, that's not included, that's not included, that's not included, but we'll make that up on variations. Seeing all of that, we don't do that. Typically, we are one of the more commercially heavy, shall we say, people in our market, but that's because we've included everything. And it's as simple as that. It's like, yeah, that's fine, but if you look at our contractors' proposals and you go through, it's all detailed down. This is how we're going to do it. This is where it is. These are the people we've gone to, and it's transparency. We work open book on most projects. I'm more than happy to go open book. This is what we make. The reason why is because this is our overheads and this is our profit. And we're a business. We need to make money. Otherwise, we can't operate. Simple as that. But I suppose in the full circle of that, to actually answer the question, is to say you need a robust plan. And once you have that plan, we still need to be able to be dynamic, because the plan always changes. Doesn't mean you can't change the plan, but you must stick to the plan. So when you're in the trenches, you've got to keep the faith and say, no, this will work, this will work, this will work. And that's it, really.
You're a really astute fella. You obviously think about stuff. And I can imagine 13-year-old George was probably quite a difficult young man, maybe, and not like and in a lot of ways, we're similar. In many ways, we're very different. You are, I'm driven, but you are like the most driven, like one of the most driven people I've seen, and that obviously comes from a sporting background. You want to win. You want to be the winner. Yeah, there is only 100%. One winner, and it's going to be me. Yeah. But you've just said like 99% of people don't win. You can't, 100%. There's only, and I was talking with Andy Ramage a couple of weeks ago about the fact that most people, there's only one winner of the Olympics. For every 4 years. There is only 100-meter, men's 100-meter sprint winner every 4 years. So everyone else who's training is a loser. Yeah. If that's the measure that you want to go with.
But the issue, the point to that is that you learn more by losing.
And
that is the point.
Yeah.
You know, it's the 99% of disappointment. It's like, okay, I'm no longer emotionally invested in losing. I'm just saying, okay, we lost. What do we do better? How do we improve? And this is what we're going to do to improve it. We might adjust that plan. This is the new plan. Now we're going to stick to this plan and keep going. He says, because part of the new 5-year plan, we are breaking into the UAE market.
You off to Dubai? Is that what this is?
Yeah, pretty much.
You basically just want to live abroad.
Yeah,
mate, I'm here for it. Can I come work for you in
Yeah.
Dubai? Like, I'm up for that.
No,
my wife won't come, but
no. Yeah, I'm the same. My wife probably won't come either. But no, it's very different. It's very difficult. So my whole business plan was set on getting to this goal, turning over X, being profitable to a certain level, and keeping it to that. I don't want to grow. I'm not looking to turn into a £200 million company and, you know, go and compete with the big guys. I'm comfortable with what I can do here. And I honestly do believe that the team that we've got here, I'm so blessed. There are so many good people that in order to double up again, we're going to need to employ a load more people. And in turn, it's going to cost me a lot more stress and a lot more grey hair. And I believe that the right pivot point is to almost do what we've done here, just somewhere else. You know,
it's a different market.
It's a different market. Yeah, you know, we've already, you know, what are we good at? We are a good main contractor, and I think that's the main reason why we get a lot of work, because a lot of modular building companies are modular building companies. It's only that if you was to only go back 5 years ago, even more so 10 years ago, it would be like, oh no, you need to go and see one of the big blue chip main contractors. They would employ a subcontractor modular building company. And if you went to a modular building company and said, oh, can you do full turnkey package? I'd be like, yeah, we can do. But, you know, what we're doing now is we're a really good lean main contractor, but we are also a modular manufacturer. So that sort of team together works well. And I just think we can implement that in different areas and in different markets quite easily. So yeah, watch this space. We're well underway.
Well, your reputation essentially precedes you. You're known before you walk in anywhere, right? Like not necessarily you personally, but certainly Explore Modular now. All these, you know, you see names on frameworks. You know, that you see other people on frameworks, and your reputation is sort of built almost sort of quietly, and now it's like we're here. Most reputation works like that, right? It builds over time. It's not just like announced.
Yeah.
You know, David Beckham. I don't know if you. In fact, are you West Ham?
I am. Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
Let's go. I was going to go David Beckham. Let's go Rio Ferdinand, one of the West Ham greats, or Paolo Di Canio, or whoever.
Yeah.
Right. Man, I'm talking old school footballers now, aren't I?
Yeah.
But they. You know, they didn't just turn up. Like Rio Ferdinand didn't just turn up and become like one of the best defenders in the world. He like was rubbish, right? Not rubbish, but he quietly like was chipping away at getting into the first team and then, you know, growing. And that seems like sort of where you're at.
It's very difficult because there's a lot of sort of imposter syndrome that kind of comes with that. You know, it's a great problem to have, don't get me wrong. But it's kind of that age-old thing of all the success happens in the background because no one really cared then, you know. And then once you're starting to make a success of things, people start to see it and they go, oh, wow, how did that happen? But also, we was trying to market in the early days, but it was more around getting some foundations in. And I really wanted secure foundations early before we started really shouting about things. And that is basically why it's kind of come up a little bit quiet, because I hear it quite a lot. People go, oh, how'd you learn this framework? You know, never heard of you guys. And it's like, well, yeah, when did you start? Last week? And it's like, no, you know, we've been going for a while. We've been in the background. We're working hard.
And that's sort of the question. Like, what behaviours are you doing in the background that no one else is that you do when no one else is watching? Because that's almost like the most important stuff. And I'm sure the people listening and watching, that's what they want to know. Because you are a successful company, but you didn't just arrive successful. You built. What was it in the background that you were doing? You know, maybe not even operationally. Like just, it could be operationally, but it could be more sort of holistically than that. You know, like picking the right people, like, you know, doing it, getting outside companies in, because we do a lot of stuff with Together We Can. So Gary runs a YouTube channel called Together We Can,
Right, got
and
it.
his whole thing is you get better stuff when people work together. So
100%.
what is it that what would be your mantra of like what you're doing in the background?
I think, you know, kind of what I said earlier and what you've just said there is that we're stronger together. It's as simple as that. If we work together, we'll achieve more. And it's having the right people that are willing to get on board with you and work with you. You know, we've got a lot of staff, we've got a lot of people, and half of it is having people come up with the ideas themselves. You know, you could literally walk into a room and say, I want something done like this, and instantly people are back up, you know, not interested. But if you can sit down with someone and say, right, how do we fix this? You know, what's the plan? And they're like, well, I don't know, I was coming to you. So, okay, well, how would you fix the problem? You know, let's see, let's listen to the people ultimately that know. You know, I'm should be careful what I say here. I'm the least qualified in the company, but I have the best people in place. So therefore, you know, when the GM comes to me and says, right, we've got this issue, he's a very experienced general manager, operations director, very successful man. I respect him so much. And, you know, he'll laugh and say, when do I ask you? But, you know, ultimately it's like, okay, well, what do you think we should do? And he comes up with the answer and it's like, I think that's a great idea. So, yeah, let's go with that. And, you know, I'm using that example, but you know, it's about letting people work as a team, be creative, come up with their own ideas, and ultimately support them. And when they get it wrong, you can't blame them. That's the biggest thing. Like, we're a team. We win together, we lose together. It's as simple as that.
I feel like that's a great way to be, because it just feels good.
Yeah.
When you're and you know, especially in an industry which is very like, it's my way or the highway.
Oh,
a lot of people are like that.
Yeah,
and I was having
yeah.
conversations before walking in the door this morning with people who were in meetings yesterday with some people who were like that, and it's like, well, that's bullying.
Yeah. And you know, I know it sounds daft, but the biggest thing as well is just enjoying it. You know, like, we don't take ourselves too seriously. Don't get me wrong. You know,
Take your work seriously, though, right?
100%.
And that's the point.
We do, you know, because we're passionate and we care. But ultimately, I think you can say everyone in the office, you know, we have a laugh. You know, we eat lunch almost every day together still. You know, it's like, even with a lot of the sort of like operational staff, you know, I'll go and sit out there and, you know, because we have like a clean canteen and, you know, like a yard canteen. And, yeah, that sounded bad, didn't it? I didn't mean that. What I meant was, there's two
I get what you're saying.
Welfare areas.
Just for clarity, yeah, there are two separate. The people in the office don't necessarily want to having to be walking. They don't. Yeah, they're not walking around in dirty boots and stuff like that.
It's a different environment.
It's a different environment, and that's what you want.
Exactly. But, you know, I'll go out there, have lunch with the lads, have a chat, have a catch up, see what's going on. Yeah, you know, like just some little things. Even today, head of production came in and he's like, look, I just want to, you know, put a flea in your ear about something. And it's like, yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm always open to listen. You know, bearing in mind there is 2 layers of management there. But, you know, listen. You know, hear what you got to say, and you know, again, how do we fix it? Okay, well, I was thinking maybe we could do this. Okay, we'll go and speak to the right people and suggest it, and tell them I support it, and off we go. You know, it's.
How do you stop then? This is a bit of an aside, but how do you stop? Maybe stop's not the right word. There are 2 levels of management between you and the person who just put a flea in your ear.
Yeah.
Now, you are the person in your business. It sounds a bit horrible, but you're at the top, right? You are the pinnacle of the business, and you're the one going out finding new work.
Yeah.
How do you stop that flea in your ear dragging you down, or taking your eye off of where you want to be going? Because they could have gone to the next person up, or the person there. So they've come to you, and how do you stop that from letting you get to where you need to be doing or what you need to be doing. Because if everyone did that, you'd never get anything done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you know the answer to that one, let me know. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I think it just comes down to people skills again, and it's just talking to people. You know, obviously there is certain aspects when I can't talk to people when my door's closed. You know, you've come in, quite a few times, but typically if my door's closed, then my door is closed. But if my door is open, then anyone is welcome to come in and talk to me, and that will continue to be the case. But ultimately, when I've got stuff to do and I've got my head down and the door's closed, I'm not contactable, and that's just how it is. So there has to be a clear boundary. But yeah, it's hearing everyone, isn't it? It's like that company mission statement. We have everyone involved. We need everyone to be involved and have the same statement and the same mission, that we're all moving to the right place. And that quality is put all the way through our business. It's not just me singing the song and saying, "Oh yeah, this is what we all do," and then everyone else is going, "Don't talk rubbish." It's we got to stick together. And typically, again, pretty lucky with the staff that we've got. From production, operational, we're all kind of on a mission to succeed. I don't know whether it's a little bit of the small guy coming up, Robin Hood kind of, David and Goliath sort of jobby, but a lot of our competition they've got a lot of captive audience on the market where they've done so much work, and I think ultimately I try to fire people up a lot, but I've been told twice this week already, and it's only Tuesday. To stop saying, "Oh, it's a great time to be alive." But it's all part of it.
Well, someone in the office said that.
Yeah, he's only playing.
Well, they should. What do they want you to do? They want you to go, "Oh, it's terrible being me right now."
Well, yeah,
it's terrible. But how do you keep it being meaningful rather than just sort of being busy? Because it'd be really easy for you to become really busy and there'd be like sort of no meaning. Where do you draw that meaning from, and how do you keep it meaningful for you and your team?
It's not an easy question to answer. I think the idea is constantly setting goals and organisation. I carry a day book every day. I can tell you exactly what I was doing over the last 5 years. So since we started, I've carried a day book and I do a list every single day. Otherwise, I can't turn my mind off when I get in bed. But they're all in my office on the side. They're all really close to me. They're literally on the left of where I sit. And you could say to me, "Oh, George, on the 20th of February, 2023," and I can go, "Yeah, hang on, yeah, here we are." And I think that helps because you can only retain so much information, right? I'm only human. I can't do everything. But being able to go through and speak to people and say, "Right, we've hit this goal. This is the next goal." It keeps people motivated, And as I said earlier, not everybody is motivated by the same things. Some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by leave. Some people just want appreciation. Some people just want a pat on the back. And it's understanding everyone's role and what they want. Some people, it's workload. Just be like, this is too much for me at the moment. Okay, let's work together. I can jump in. What can I do? And I think that's the biggest thing, really, is what we talked about, where it's talking to people, and having that chat and relationship and being personable.
Well, what responsibility then comes with that? Comes with being like the visible person, or like because you're essentially like the influencer of your business, and like the word influencer has sort of been hijacked by a bunch of people trying to sell stuff online, right?
Yeah.
But you are the influence among your people, and that is a great thing because they want to be near you and around you. But how do you personally like feel the responsibility of that?
Oh, it's very tough. I feel the pressure a lot. There's a big overhead that comes with running a business of this size and this nature and the amount of money that we're turning over. So I take it very personal. I feel that I'm not just paying my mortgage, I'm paying everyone's mortgage. And maybe that is a little bit self-centered to a degree, but ultimately that responsibility does lie with me. When there's a time of like, right, okay, we've got this project, these projects, and we've got financial controllers and commercial people coming to me to say, well, it could be a cash flow pinch at this item. And then, it's where logic prevails. And because I'm the one that ultimately takes the full responsibility, it's like, no, if we push this project to here, pull that project to here, that will balance this balances that, and this, that, blah, blah, blah. And ultimately that's because I'm the one that if there is a hole, I've got to make the phone calls. So we don't make those phone calls. And you'll be very sort of pleased, and all of our suppliers will vouch for us for this. We've never made a late payment. Never. We don't make late payments. Cash flow is a very guarded, difficult question that's thrown about, or word that's thrown about in construction. And I don't actually... be careful what I say, because there'll be loads of construction people go, whoa, going to jump on me. But cash flow is something that is there to be managed, is my personal opinion. It's that if we are commercially literate and we understand this is our work process, this is our workflow, and even as a subcontractor, if a main contractor is giving you a program and you've taken the time to do a cash flow forecast and you can work out, here's all my expenditure, which is, you're a business, you should be able to do, you should know what your overheads are. I can tell you what my overheads are to the penny, to the week, to the day, to the hour. I can tell you how much money each man has to produce in production per hour. So you've got to understand your numbers. So therefore, if you've got a program and it's a year and when you're feeding in all your expenditure, when you're going to get paid and what your payment terms are, that structure is fixed. What will people say is, well, no, you're working for a main contractor. You see that program, throw it in the bin. It's like, okay, but that is ultimately your responsibility as well to manage your customer. Okay, so are your terms and conditions correct in your quotation? Are you understanding what's being enforced on you from down the line? Are you aware that you've signed up to this JCT contract and all these amendments? And there's never been less of an excuse in the world of AI. I used to pay people £500 ago to have a full legal review of a contract. And now we still do pay somebody to check the AI stuff, because ultimately it needs to be checked by a person. But ultimately now what we do is we chuck it in an AI checker and say, as a small main contractor, can you please highlight all of the areas that may be of risk? And then they highlight them all, and then they... that goes to our external person, who then manually validates that, but it's about a tenth of the cost. So there's not an excuse. So the whole idea is that, and then the same thing applies as the main contractor and to your clients. So, this is the program, these are the costs. We've got some modulars a little bit different, because usually it's like most construction, it's just progress claims per month, applications. But we typically have a milestone payments as well as applications, because we have a site running on site, and we have our own site running where there's stuff going through production. So the stuff in production is usually done on a milestone payment, but the stuff on the site is done via applications. But it all still applies. It's basically, this is when we're going to get paid. Okay, this is when I need to pay my suppliers. Okay, make sure everyone is back to back those terms. Again, honesty, transparency. This is when we're getting paid. If you miss your application date, it is not my fault. It's as simple as that. If you don't hit your application date, therefore I can't put in my application, including your evaluation, and that's where we are. You have to wait till next month. But typically we don't have that, and I can sit here today and you could ring pretty much any supplier, anyone, not pretty much, you could ring any of our suppliers and they'll say, great company, they always pay us.
Well, actually, I've got the... No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
I don't tend to touch on AI on here, but you have. So I am interested now. What effect do you think it's going to have on your company? Because you've already taken a person's job, or AI, you haven't, personally. AI has already taken a job that used to be done by a person. Now, where do you see that going in your sort of corner of the industry?
So it kind of brings me back to the farmers report, which was commissioned. It's quite a few years ago now, but it was commissioned by the government to talk about modern methods of construction. And that paper was called Modernise or Die. And I very much live by that. We need to modernise or die. It's as simple as that. You know, we're going to be left behind. So we need to be dynamic. And that's what makes us so agile as a business. These big operations, you say, oh, actually, we're going to implement this or try this. It doesn't happen. Where, you know, we are dynamic enough to be able to say, let's trial this. Does this work? How does that affect us? And, you know, we could go round and round in circles. Where does it end? Yes, there is lots of stuff that we need to be concerned about. There's lots of stuff, safeguarding, data, all sorts of stuff. But ultimately, you think of the typewriter, you think of the internet, you know, there's all these things. What about the poor librarians that, you know, when the internet was launched, there's going to be more opportunity for checking. So yeah, do I feel a little bit bad that someone's, you know, losing potentially some work? Yes, but do I? It depends on how deep you get, doesn't it? Do we need someone to be that educated to review something that much that I have to pay so much just to protect myself? So, you know, should it be like that in the first place? Is the answer to the question. But yeah, AI is a very interesting tool. We do use it, but we need to be careful.
It's a real conundrum, isn't it, AI? Because the examples you give, like the typewriter or the internet, right? The typewriter is a tool that is used by somebody else to write after they were doing handwriting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But imagine that typewriter came along and could also type itself and think for you to the thing you were going to type. Like, that's not just putting someone out of a job, that's putting like 10 people out of a job, because the person telling the person to do the typewriting is also out of a job because they haven't got to think either.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, well, to what degree, you know, almost to what degree do we allow this new technology to arrive? And do we even have a choice?
I sort of promised myself, I was actually thinking about this morning, that I wasn't going to talk about this, but if you want to go down that road.
Well, I'm open. If you don't want to,
No, 100%. It's more scary is the humanoids that are coming, and the momentum that we're making in Boston with the Boston Robotics, and even in China where we've got. I watched a 60-minute clip where they've gone in and they basically are explaining how the robotics technology has moved on so much because that it is now teaching itself. So basically, they brought in the reporter and said, right, we're going to put some stuff on you, which is kind of like your basic, you know, tracking, which is how they used to do a lot of sort of inputs into the data and software. And he basically just stood to camera, done a 20-second piece, and then he just said, right, can you just do any sort of jumping around activity that you like? So he just done a jumping jack. And then they programmed that in, and it said, right, okay, now we want to, if we was to upload this and do it manually, it only knows how to do that. But what we do is we upload it, and we get the AI to run this at 6 million scenarios. So it will if it was a bit slippy, if it was a bit windy, if it was half an inch forward, half an inch backwards, if his hand was here, if his arm was there, if his arm was here, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And then it took 6 hours. So he came back the next day, and the robot walked in exactly in the same mannerism. Wow. It was exact arm movements. It was like, you know, everyone's got their own bespoke walk and how they talk and their mannerisms and how they move their hands. And now you're sitting there now. This robot done exactly that, done the full piece to camera, and then done the jumping jack.
Wow.
And then the ones in China, they're actually doing Thai boxing because we touched on it a little bit earlier. You know, I like Thai boxing. I think it's more kickboxing from over there. But that literally the robot is standing up on one leg, and from being from a martial artist, I understand the mechanics of the way it's standing up on one foot, turning the inside of its foot, and then turning its whole hip over to generate that movement. And it's not falling over. They're like kicking each other properly in the correct manner. Wow. Lifting their foot up, turning their hip over, making a connection, and not falling over and bringing their leg back and boxing.
Wow.
And it's like, wow, that's scary. So yeah, I do get it, and that's why I'm saying it needs to be controlled.
Well, and I think that's one of the bigger issues, isn't it? Like you listen to all of these things, and it's one analogy of a guy was talking about basically everyone knows there's a cliff edge, but they're all running towards it to be the first one to sort of jump off the edge.
Yeah.
It's like whether it's Elon Musk who's just got a bit of a well, not a bit, he's got like a god complex or whatever, or if it's, I don't know, a Chinese company who just want to do over the West or whatever it is. The crazy thing, and the thing that I think is phenomenal, is that it's great. It takes 6 hours to program that robot, right? But it doesn't take 6 hours to program every other robot.
Yeah.
So once you program one robot, you just copy and paste that to every single robot you could ever make, and you could have an army of kickboxers like as quick as you like.
Yeah. And
as long as you've got the robots to put it in.
Yes, exactly.
And and then you'll have robots. You'll be programming robots to build robots to do.
It is a real iRobot moment.
It is
from Will Smith.
very much so. But sort of bringing it back to the construction industry,
sorry.
I'm not sure.
Got a little bit excited there.
Oh yeah, no, but it's totally relevant because there are some jobs like it's going to be pretty difficult unless you completely reshaped the manufacturing of a house. Like plumbing, for example. There are lots of different types of plumbing.
Oh, yeah.
So a plumber, at the moment, probably pretty safe because every kitchen setup is different, pretty much. But imagine that was all uniform. In the future, we build, you build, modular buildings.
Yeah.
You could make them all exactly the same.
Yes.
And all of the everything in it exactly the same. So there could be a moment in time where a robot comes along and goes, "I can do that," and you're like, "Sweet, I'll have a robot who's doesn't sleep, doesn't eat, doesn't drink. All I need to do is put some electricity through it."
I hear everything you're saying, but I do honestly believe it's the whole we're stronger together. And we, if we work together, it will work out better. And prime example, I had someone that was working with us that clearly made his way through the interview pretty well, but it didn't work out. But he was using AI for everything, and it was so clear that he didn't know what he was talking about. Because somebody can copy and paste an email and get it done quicker. But only when you get into the nuts and bolts and say, "Why are you suggesting this? Where does this come from?" Because the robot told me. And you're like, well, okay, you're along the right lines, but you're not really understanding the context of what this is. And I still believe it's very similar to Google. Or a library. It's just quicker.
Yeah.
Every bit of information in the world is out there to go and find. You just got to find it. They've just made it easier for you to find it. So all it's really going to do is make us work quicker and smarter and all the rest of it. Difficulty being is from a manual handling point of view is how that's going to affect us. And that is scary, but I think we are still quite a bit of time away from that.
Yeah, they reckon we got a few years.
We've got another 2 or 3 years.
But it's great to talk about, right, on a podcast. I think it is interesting. The future is always interesting, and that sort of gets us onto like a bit about legacy and like the legacy that you might like to leave. You read all the right books, and you're doing your mindfulness and stuff like that. But when you get into that, what do you want people to remember about how you lived and not just what you achieved?
Yeah, that's again, I keep saying that, it's a tough question. It's really difficult to say. The reason for that is what is important ultimately. And the more successful you become, the more difficult that question actually is to answer. Because you constantly think it's chasing this goal. But ultimately, when you start to achieve a few of these, decent goals, you're just like, well, what's next? I've achieved it. I'm a massive family man. I'm all about my children and wife and family. That's the most important thing to me. So really, I think it's important for my legacy to be a loving and caring and hardworking man. Really, that's about it. Which is very important to me. I try to make sure that my children see me being loving towards their mum. I try to carry that into the workplace of caring about all the employees and trying to be a good boss, ultimately. I don't like the word boss. It actually makes me cringe a little bit when people say, "Oh yeah, let me ask my boss." And I think, "Oh, my boss," but it's because I care. I just want us all to do well together. We all progress. We all make some money. I try and help everyone and go from there. But ultimately, you can't be a soft touch. You still got to be strong. But that doesn't mean that you don't care. So I think the biggest thing really is just loving and hardworking.
So you'd want to be known to be the loving geezer and a hardworking fella.
Yeah, because my brain never stops. I never stop. Like I never stop.
I can tell.
Yeah, no, I never stop. I woke up at 5:30 this morning. And I was pinging emails and doing things and getting things, and I was looking at new vans last night at 12 o'clock last night. I can't stop. I can't help it. And then I'm thinking, right, okay, well, how can we invest? What can we do better? How can we do this? How can we do that? We're opening offices in Dubai. We're looking at investments, and we're looking at sort of buying our own land for our own modular buildings, and looking at more of a developer role as well as a client-based role, and it's just constantly turning all of the time. So I'm always working, but what I don't want to be is one of those people that's like, oh yeah, he was just like one of those businessmen that just lived in his glass box all day every day. And that's one of my biggest frustrations. My work-life balance is very good. I'm not going to pretend that it's not, but I put in a lot of hours, but I balance it. So, for instance, last week I was working one evening till 7:30, 8 o'clock. But then, I'll finish early and pick the kids up the next day, which will be a nice surprise, and we'll do something fun. So I definitely do keep that balance. But yeah, I probably do need to switch off a little bit more. But it's just the way I'm wired up. I can't help it really. Sometimes I get in trouble because I'm trying to start the next thing before I finish the thing I'm doing. But that's life.
Well, we like to finish the Hodcast with the what we think is one of our better questions, and you've loved our questions so far.
Yeah. Apart from the host.
Apart from the host, yeah.
No, of course.
Massive idiot. To avoid the regrets of the living, what is one thing that is non-negotiable for you for a good life, and what is one thing that you would look and go, that's a red flag? I need to absolutely make sure that I'm not heading the wrong way on that.
The red flag. Let's start with the red flag. Red flag, I would say, is just being too selfish. You've got to be selfless. If you want things to come to you, you've got to be selfless. And that is ultimately what it comes down to, because there is moments, I'm sure, as you can see, where I get overexcited and I'm like, because we can do this and that mean this and that mean that and this mean that. And sometimes I can leave people behind. And you need to sort of step back and say, well, hang on a minute, if we done this together and that worked with this person, and then, that makes much more sense. And ultimately, I'm going to leave myself overexposed over there. And I do that a lot. I can be like, oh, if we can do this and do that and do that. And, I lost some money on some investments previously, and that is through trying to do too many things at once. I missed the first bit of the question.
What's your one non-negotiable for a good life?
I don't know. It's a really tough question. My non-negotiable. I'm stumped on that. We might have to edit that bit.
Yeah. Well, what's something that you won't do without then? That you have to have in your life, and that makes your life. We're talking about avoiding the regrets of the living. So when you're looking back, what would have been? What would you want to be in 20 years' time? What would you want to be your
Okay.
non-negotiable? Then let's put it that way.
Okay. Right. So that's a tough question. If I had to have one non-negotiable, I think it would have to be follow your dreams. You know, I followed my dream as a kid. I didn't ultimately get to that dream, but I followed it. And it shaped me into who I am today. With this business, I followed my dreams. Everybody told me I was crazy. Modular building companies go bust all of the time. They're like, why are you doing this? And it's like, because I care. And I think that's the most important thing. You know, I care. I enjoy it. I like being here because I care. And I think that is 100% a non-negotiable. You know, you're sitting here now, you're hosting this podcast, and you're doing it because you care. And that's what makes it fun, right? So that, for me, ultimately is the most non-negotiable, is following your dream and finding something you're passionate about.
There you go. That wasn't such a difficult question in the end, was it? You
No.
got there.
No, we got there in the end.
Well, I'm really grateful for your time. You've given up some time. I know your office is literally only in the next room, but it's the time of being here is has been great. So thank you so much, and
thank you.
It's been such a pleasure to get to know you a bit more, and to sort of open you up to the people who listen to us, because I guarantee that they're gonna take loads. If they want to find you, if they want to, if they want one of your services, what's the best way to get you or one of your team?
Yeah, I mean, it would be contact us through the website or give us a call and speak to one of our pre-construction team. That'd be the best way to get in contact, really. But I think we should do a new segment.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, and it's going to be the Hodcast interviewee ask the presenter questions.
Okay, what's your question?
This is like the hot topic.
Go on, what's your question? You want a hot take, do you?
Right, okay, yeah, I want a hot take. Right, so I think we should do like a quick fire round. This has just come to me, as I said earlier, my brain works. So I think we should do like association words, which might be a little bit fun.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Oh gosh, fun.
So like,
we don't have fun on this podcast.
Well, that's what I mean, right? So I'm saying, and this is the way I like to work, because it's fun, right? We just got to have a little bit of love.
Let's do it.
So let's do association words. So I'll say a word. You've got to say the first thing that pops into your brain.
Oh gosh, this could go mild.
Yeah.
You go on.
Podcasts. Quicker.
Stu Whiffen. That's a weird one. That is weird, isn't it?
That is a weird one. But he does that to me as well, because he's weird. But no, I'm joking. Very good friend of mine. Very good friend of mine. Okay, brick.
Jacket.
Jacket.
Yeah.
I said brick. You said jacket.
Yeah.
Okay, a brick jacket.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's weird.
Are you going to wear one of those, a brick jacket? Oh, is that because you've got your new jacket?
No. So do you know what brick jacket is? It goes over the top. So a stack of bricks. Keep them dry. It will go over. Weird.
Yes.
I was carrying one about the other day. Maybe that's what it is.
Okie doke. Right. Car.
Tesla.
Oh, Tesla.
I'm sorry.
Football.
Sorry. West Ham.
Irons. And let's make it a little bit more about you. So, what is your one go-to that's a non-negotiable? Let's hear your non-negotiable.
Oh, my non-negotiable. My non-negotiable, and it sounds stupid, but I hate being late.
Okay. Yeah, that's
being
good.
Punctual. I'd rather be 3 hours early than 1 minute late.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
It's just a massive disrespect.
Yes.
That is a non-negotiable. Like respect. It must be respect.
Okay.
Then it's my non-negotiable, because lateness just shows an utter lack of disrespect.
Right. So
and sometimes I am late, and sometimes it's not your fault, but it still makes me feel bad.
No, exactly. Well, yeah. In that case, thank you so much for having me, and welcome to the Hodcast.
Bless you, mate. You're an absolute legend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that is unusual. Cut.